Hello. Once again, this is the grumpy writing coach come to annoy you with such question as, what in the hell is point of view? And why does it matter? And how does that differ from viewpoint? It's a question that's at the heart of writing. It's a question that we pretty much all get wrong, and part of the reason is because of something we learned in school. We are told that point of view is a function of which personal pronouns you use. So therefore, if you say, John did this, he did that, that's third person. If you say, I did this, this is first person. And of course, there's also second person. It's not used very much, which is you will go here, or you will do this, or you do this. There's also fourth person, but that's only reserved for certain alien species, and we don't use that on Earth. So the question is, what is it for and what does it do? And here's the thing. Yes, first and third person are points of view. But most people use them as the narrator. In other words, John did this or I did this. But that's not John doing it. That's the narrator telling you that John did it. And the narrator putting on a wig and makeup to pretend to be the person who once lived the story doesn't change that. It's still someone who's not there telling us what happened there. Okay? And that can be used, and I'll get to that in another session. But in general, we want our reader to be and feel like they are on the scene, living the events. So what we really want to talk about is viewpoint. Viewpoint is immensely important because everyone who sees a scene has a different viewpoint. Let's take a perfect example. You're out looking out over a valley. You're on a rise of land looking out, and there's a valley, and it's got plots of land where you can see that crops are sown and there are houses here and there. And off in the distance, there's what looks like the beginning of a mountain range. There are clouds over it, and it appears like it's going to be rain. Okay? Very simple thing. We all see it. But let's look at, there's the starving farmer. He's standing there looking at the plants in the fields that are nearest to him, which are his plants. The leaves are drooping and dry, and he is praying for rain. Yes, there's rain over the damn mountain where the winds go up and the rain falls down, but it doesn't seem to be getting to his land. And if it doesn't rain soon, his crops will die. And how will he get through the winter? But let's go back again. Same place. We have the tourist. Tourist doesn't know from farming. They look out, they see plants. They see these beautiful mountains in the distance, and there's clouds over them in dramatic form. And they are enthralled by the view. So here we have a guy who's worried about dying. Standing 10 feet from him is the tourist who's going, how beautiful that is. Let's move over another 10 feet, and there stands a woman farmer who is looking at her crops. But that view, in a different story, shows those crops as being wet. The rain is not just on the mountain. It's there. And her crops are dying because of too much water. And she has no choice. She's a widow. And to feed her family, if the rain doesn't stop very, very soon and save her crop, she will be forced into marriage with he of the stinking breath and the behavior that's repulsive to her, because she has no choice. And then there's the lover. He shows up at that same view, and he sees beauty, he sees growth, and that reminds him of the children that he intends to have with this woman that he adores. And the shape of the mountain reminds him of her shape and of the joy that he knew last night with her. Different people, different viewpoint, different stories. The setting is the same. The details differ. Different viewpoint, different story. Does that make sense? So, how do we get this person into this viewpoint? The answer is not point of view, but viewpoint. We have to make this reader know the scene as the character does in that moment. That same woman, a month later, assuming the rain stopped, is happily gathering her crops and saying, thank God I don't have to marry that bastard. Okay, that same tourist, well, he'd see the same thing, of course. The farmer might be looking at a field that's dry and barren and seeing himself in terrible trouble or great success. But each of them, again, will see it differently. So we must, if the reader is to appreciate what is happening in the story and not just be learning it as a study, as a history, we have to make them know exactly what that character is feeling and why, to the point where they feel it. Does that make sense to you? It's the thing that nails everyone, because in school we are taught to explain and to report. And when we come to writing, because no one reminds us that they offer degree programs in various areas of fiction, we just assume, well, writing is writing, and so what do I need? I need a good story idea and a little bit of luck, and there I go. And as a matter of fact, last night I was on a writing website, and on it someone came in and said, I'm new to writing. I don't know exactly how to start. What should I do? And the majority of responses to this person from people like you and I, who suffer from what I call the great misunderstanding, were advising, oh, just start writing and, get it down on paper and then you can edit it. Oh, it's fun, just do it. Well, every successful writer you talk to will say the same thing. Just write it, because you can't edit, you can't fix what you haven't written. And that is absolute truth. But the thing that we don't realize is that they are assuming that you know how to write in the way that they do. And so, yes, you just get it down, and your viewpoint will be right, and you will have the inciting incident, and you will have a short-term scene goal, and all of the things that are necessary to entice the reader to enjoy your story. But if you don't have that, you're going to write a report, because that's what we're trained to write in school. And as a report, you're going to tell the reader that the farmer is standing there and he is looking at his crop and he is sad. Well, that makes the farmer sad, but it sure doesn't make the reader sad. And we don't tell the reader that we cried at our father's funeral. We give the reader a reason to cry, to weep over the loss of this wonderful person, or to be thankful that he's finally gone. It depends on the story, but the reader has to care. the reader has to feel. So we don't just talk about point of view. As a matter of fact, what's the difference between my saying, John went to the store and bought food for dinner, and my saying, I went to the store and bought food for dinner? Is there any difference? Absolutely not. If I say, he went to the garage to get the car, that's one of my favorite examples. Lots of people will use that. Why do I care? Why do I care where the car is? Who cares if it's in the garage or in the street? He went to get the car. Okay? And that is coming from the narrator when I say he or I went to the garage. In reality, if you're going to be writing this in a story, nothing happens on that trip to the garage. So we don't bother telling anybody about it. Instead, we have him in the story turn and say, Sue, I'm going to get the car. I'll meet you out front. The trip to the garage is, who cares? At that point, we put a break, maybe a double line space, and start out with him in the car talking to Sue. Or we might put some sort of a space like a couple of asterisks. I tend to use the little degree marks as a spacer to show a significant time break. And say something like, as he locked the car, before going into wherever he's going, I'd say, as he locked the car, he turned to Sue and said, do you want me to? And there we go. We now start out. And the trip getting there was irrelevant because nothing happened that sets the scene, develops character, or moves the plot. And if it doesn't do one of those, and you have it in your story, chop it out. Because every unnecessary word that you put in that story slows the action, slows the reading. If you, for example, have to move a character from the couch to the front door, and it takes you longer to describe that character getting there from the couch to the front door, then your story is moving in slow motion if it's not as quick as if he really did it. Your story has to move quickly. It has to march along. It has to have impact, not facts. Okay? Does that make sense? I just wanted to point out, wake up. Ah, there she is. I'm very proud of that one. That is my very first magazine cover. I'm in there somewhere. And it's a science fiction magazine, and that's a space babe. Back when I was a boy, science fiction magazines featured that sort of thing. I mean, there she is with a sword bigger than she is and a ray gun in her hand. Ripped clothing and looking sexy. That was the hallmark of the science fiction magazine back in the 50s and even up to the 60s, especially back even before that. So that was my first one, and I'm very proud of that. Don't know what her point of view is. I wouldn't even want to guess. So, I hope that makes sense to you. And this is the Grumpy Writing Coach signing off again. And I'll see you next time.